Today, students in Columbia University bursted into the library there with kafiyas trying to occupy the place and chanted that they want Intifada. And they often, when they're asked what they mean when they say Intifada, they say the word Intifada means some kind of uprising. But words only mean what humans use them for. If there's a word that every human being means the same thing when they say it, even if you can find some dictionary that says something else, it means what people say. And I want to tell you a little bit about what Intifada means because I have firsthand experience and knowledge with it. And I'm not speaking to the students who are chanting it because I don't expect any kind of mercy, sympathy, and frankly, humanity from them. I'm speaking to their fellow students, the ones that are neutral, not the ones that are pro-Israel, not the ones that are chanting Intifada, the ones that are standing, looking at both sides and trying to figure out what's going on and how a conflict from 6,000 miles away finds itself to your campus. I want to let you know what it means when they chant Intifada so that when you decide one way or the other, your decision is informed. And when you decide, let's say, to take their side with a kafia, with the watermelon stickers, or God knows what else, just understand that that's what it means. That's how we take it. And if you're okay with that, that's your choice. But remember, this is what how we take it. This is how your future employer may take it. This is how the legal authorities, the law enforcement might take it. This is what Intifada means. So what does Intifada mean? Usually it means referring to what happened in Israel when Palestinians decided to launch an Intifada in the 1980s and when I was younger in the early 2000s. Let me just I'm not going to tell you what happened in the 1980s, but I'll tell you what happened in the early 2000s when I saw it. Intifada meant that civilians going onto buses, public transportation, city buses in Israel, didn't know if they're going to come off those buses because often the Palestinian nationalists would send people to basically explode the entire bus. And there were several of those. I grew up in West Jerusalem, and that happened. It happened a bunch of times, most famously, the number 2 bus on the way to the Western Wall. I was on that bus 24 hours after the explosion of the first one with the many, many civilian casualties that took place. And there was silence because 24 hours earlier, it was the number 2 bus. There were children, women, and men, mostly women though, going to pray at the Western Wall. And few people survived that explosion. And Intifada is something that primarily aims at civilians, at Israeli civilians, at Jewish civilians. That's what it meant. It meant that when you would walk through the old city of Jerusalem, which is a place that I and my people have a 3,000-year-old connection to, there's a chance someone's going to show up from behind you and you will not get back home that night. That's what it means. I'll tell you a personal experience. It was a Saturday night sometime around 2002, and I went with a friend. We were in downtown Jerusalem, and suddenly we hear this huge explosion, windows shake automatically, you hear sirens. I can't describe the full magnitude of this double huge explosion that was actually meant to trap people because there was one explosion with many casualties. And then by the time the ambulances and the medics arrived, there was another planted explosion. So the cruelty of the people who planned this was extraordinary because they set off the first explosive and then they timed the next one just on time for the ambulances and for the medics to arrive for the second explosive to go off. It was extraordinarily sadistic and cruel. And that's something that I was, thank God, I myself was not injured at the time, but there were many people there who were injured and there were people who lost their lives. And that was no exception. There were many of those. There were many of those, and thousands of Jews lost their lives during those years. Another thing, every bus we took as teenagers in certain areas had to have this bulletproof window and had to have this kind of armed, like had to be very thickly shielded because of the many attacks Palestinians aimed at Israeli buses and at Israeli civilians. Now, again, you need to understand, Intifada meant and still means primarily the targeting of civilians. I was in one of these buses when the rocks rained in on the roof, but thank God the bus was shielded enough for nothing to happen. I also walked through an area in East Jerusalem as probably an 11-year-old and got beaten by Palestinian nationalist teenagers who were really going with this call that's now being heard on campuses, calling for intifada. And so when you hear people saying, oh, we're calling for intifada, but we mean it's peaceful or whatever, that's nonsense, because we all know what it means. I personally have seen it firsthand, unfortunately, and that's what they want to start over again. Now, they will rationalize, etc. I'm not even here to debate the monstrosity of their opinion. I'm not here to debate people who think that civilians are a legitimate target. I'm not here to debate those Palestinian nationalists. I am here to tell the people who tolerate this kind of behavior, who are polite about it, who don't condemn it, or even who maybe take a kafia or a sticker or what have you not. Just remember that when you side with the word intifada, when you're marching with people that are chanting intifada, we're going to hold you accountable because that's what it means. I've lived through it. And you know what? If someone was marching through the streets chanting to wish those kinds of things on you, things that brought about the loss of thousands of lives, things that brought about people losing their entire families, then you would also want the chanters to be held accountable. Now, true, there is something called free speech in America. I personally am not a free speech absolutist. I do believe that hateful speech that calls for violence should be criminalized and held accountable. That is my belief. And free speech, if you wish. And yeah, you may be legally allowed to chant that, but just remember that that's what it means, and that's what you're signing up for. And I hope you have the upbringing, the internal moral compass, and the brain and fortitude to understand that a good future means a future with no violence, with peace, with diplomatic negotiations, discussions, conversations with people who disagree with you, and that chanting and calling for violence should never be an option and have never made anyone's life any better ever. And the Palestinian people are no exception to that. If the Palestinian people would like to have a state, all they need to do is accept it. The world has offered it to them several times. They had their leader Yasser Arafat, who chose literally intifada over a state, which Bill Clinton handed him on a silver plate, but he rejected it. And so I would urge you, if you would like to see Palestinian liberation, as the campus chanters say, urge them to choose diplomacy, peace, and nonviolence. That's the way to go.